In this video, we're going to talk about rounding numbers. When we round, we are using rules to change the number so that it is now an approximation and has fewer digits. The purpose of rounding is so we have a simpler number to perform operations with, to read, and to understand. When we round, our number is no longer exact, but now it's easier to work with. When you round numbers, the first step is to identify which number needs to be rounded, and then underline it. Next, look at the numbers to the right of it. If it's less than 5, then the underlined digit stays the same. If it's 5 or greater, then the underlined digit goes up by 1. Then, digits to the left of the decimal but after the underlined digit become zeros. Those are whole numbers and are trapped by the decimal. But digits to the right of the decimal and after the underlined digit are not written in the rounded number. Let's go through a few examples together. This first one says to round 842 to the nearest tens. What digit is in the tens position? The 4 is. So now we need to look behind the 4 and we see that the digit behind the 4 is 4 or less. Since it's 4 or less, our number that we underlined stays the same. Now there really is a decimal point at the end of this number. So that digit in between the 4 and the decimal's trapped, meaning we have to make that a 0. So our number rounded is 840. This problem said to round to the nearest tens, and we did. We rounded down to 840. This next example says to round 1,428,246 to the nearest 10,000. What digit is in the 10,000s? The 2 is. So now we can look behind the 2 and see that that's an 8. Because it's 5 or greater, our 2 becomes a 3. Again, we have a decimal at the end of this number. So everything in between that 3 and the decimal turned to zeros. So our answer is 1,430,000. This next one says to round 16.885 to the nearest whole number. Whole number is the nearest ones. The 6 is in the ones, so we can look behind the 6 and we see that we have an 8. That 8 makes the 6 a 7. We don't need the numbers after the decimal place, so our final answer, rounded, is 17. 17 is very close to 16.885. Because of that 8 behind the 6, we rounded up to 17. Let's go through 2 more examples together. These problems want us to round in the decimal places. This first one says to round to the nearest hundredth. What digit is in the hundredth spot? The first one after the decimal is in the tenth, so the 4 is the next one in the hundredths. We can look behind the 4 and see that the number behind the 4 is a 1, meaning it's 4 or less. So the number we underline stays the same, and the numbers after that don't have to be written in our answer. So 3.14 is our rounded answer. Notice that the last place we see is in the hundredth spot, so we know we rounded correctly. Let's go through one final problem, and this one's a little bit trickier than the ones above. The first step is to underline the digit in the tenths. That's the 9. When we look behind the 9, we see an 8. That 8 makes the 9 go up 1. To go up 1, it really means that it's a 10. So since we have a 10, the 9 becomes a 0, and we have to bring that 1 over to the ones position that has a 0 in it. The digits after the underlined number don't have to be written in our answer. So our final answer is 5, 1. We add the 1 and the 0 to make 1, and then we have our decimal 0. Again, the last decimal place we see is in the tenths.